Okay, everybody, welcome back to Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman and me, Fred Carroll. That's Scott over in California, basking in the sunlight, which we don't quite see yet. We don't even have spring like weather yet. But you do have your hoodie on there, so you must be a little chilly. What's it, 69?
Actually, yeah.
Ooh,
And that
horrible weather.
sunshine, we have some clouds. The sunshine is a reflection that comes in, bounces off my toolbox over my left shoulder. So that's what that is. So
Well, we're 49 degrees. It is sunny out right now here in Connecticut. And our weather is turning into rain, lots of rain, but I'm okay with that.
we had rain
So,
here all week. We had rain here all weekend, so we're getting rain on a regular basis.
well,
But
that's good for you.
your winter's different.
Yeah, it's a little different, but so this week where it's just you and me, so we're just going to talk about general stuff to do with addiction and addiction recovery specifically, try to at least. But I wanted to start by explaining to you something. I had done a research recently on getting ready for the show.
Were you
And I just
supervised?
checked, I just checked some like
Supervised though?
websites.
Were you
No,
supervised?
nobody supervises me.
All right,
Just
I want to
just
get
by
it.
the dog.
It was unsupervised.
Yeah, I
Got it.
was
Okay.
not supervised. Unsupervised research. And I basically just Google search addiction news. And I try to get current as possible. Of course, a lot of these things that they do, scientists and stuff, are based off of 2020 and 2021 because that's the research numbers and stuff. But all we could do is the best. But one I ran across, which sometimes it's a blessing, I guess, when they're doing these things. They created this drug called vanoxarine. Have you ever heard of vanoxarine? It's for
No.
cocaine. So supposedly it works wonders for people that are addicted to cocaine. But now they've recently determined, and they're going into further research, that it also curbs colon cancer. They found out by doing the research on it that it kills the cancer in colons. So that's a positive from a negative to a positive. And it's also very successful in cocaine addiction. And it's vanoxarine.
How does it work?
VA.
Is it a blocker, or does it help with withdrawal, or
I think
what does it do?
from what I only read, I don't want to be the guy that comes on a podcast and just reads the whole article and stuff. So people could do their own research on this, but these are more headlines. But what I did read of it said, yeah, it's basically a stimulant that gives them the same feeling that the cocaine is in the brain, that part of the brain that it does affects. I can't think of the word now, but and helps with them getting off it. It's something they're using, I guess, similar to the Suboxone and stuff.
So it's a craving controller. That's what I was kind of looking for. What it actually does, it controls the craving, which Suboxone helps with as well. It diverts. It tells the brain, you don't need it right now, or the craving is arrested, so to speak. So
Right.
yeah, that sounds good. I'll do some
Yeah.
research on it. By the way, speaking of research, so I don't know if you got those videos I sent you or not. One of them went out there, and I think it's LinkedIn. I'm doing some feedback, maybe it's YouTube. Anyway, so somebody talked about something, and one form of recovery versus another, and how this one helps many people where the other one doesn't. I don't want to get into the names, and somebody, and I said, yeah, one size doesn't fit all. Then someone took that comment the wrong way and said, well, I don't think that's the best way to approach it. I said, well, understand that what I'm saying is, and I explained myself. And then somebody says, well, what about so-and-so? And I said, well, I haven't really heard much about it, but I'd look forward to reading the data. And then somebody chimes in and says, well, data can be manipulated many different ways. So if I were you, I wouldn't wait for the data. So it's just interesting how people approach information that passes in front of them. You know what I'm talking about? It's, especially with this particular disease of addiction, because between the stigma and what people think works, and I just heard today as a sidebar that Elon Musk is on prescription for, I think it was ketamine, and he said it really works for him, and there's
Yeah.
been all this mushroom psychedelic conversation the last couple of months, and then of course Oregon has turned everything upside down from where they were a few years ago. So I don't think in this industry of substance use disorder treatment, alcohol addiction treatment, uh, you know, gambling addiction, prescription drug addiction, food disorders, that anyone really actually has the answers. You know what I mean? They kind of go with information that they think is topical, or I call it the Oprah Winfrey syndrome. Whatever, like you said earlier, you read something topical and then you move that information forward. And you're right, the data in the field of addiction is really, not time sensitive. It's 2-3 years old, and a lot of it is modifications of studies that were done 10 years ago. And somebody just has an update on it. So they go, yeah, this study from 2 years ago, but actually most of the data came from 8 to 10 years ago. So we're not doing a good
Yeah.
job treating.
Unfortunately, people aren't patient anymore. There's no patience because information is so fast getting to us, but they don't realize these scientists have to do years and years of studies to get to a point, and they have to fail and then fix and fail and fix, and there's boards and there's money.
Well,
You need to pay people.
well, I'm going to push you on this one because you look at the tobacco industry, they knew what they knew back in the 70s, and they never disclosed it. I mean, the Sackler family, the Purdue company with OxyContin, they knew a long time ago that it was really addictive, and that ultimately long-term usage of their product didn't take away pain. So there's that other side too, where, in big pharma, I don't know anybody who trusts them, tends to do all these things. And then you look at the cost of pharmaceuticals in our country compared to other parts of the world. Why does the White House have to put pressure on big pharma, in the pharmaceutical industry to reduce product costs? So I don't know. It's almost like it's a big business, and it's like I was interviewed the other day by this group. I think they're partially out of Australia. I think I sent you the link, and they asked me, why would someone make a product that kills their consumer? I said, because it's good for their business. It's free advertising.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't make sense in the human mind. Any of that goes to the fentanyl and all that. But me and you know that from the addiction side, like I've talked to heroin addicts, I've talked to people, and their first response when somebody that they know dies is, where did they get it? It must be amazing. They all think they could handle
Right.
that. And that's what they think. If it was strong enough to kill him, it must be amazing. But that's the addiction side of things. Is there's a reason that alcoholism goes to the whiskeys, to the vodkas and stuff like that, because the bear eventually isn't fast enough. Eventually they need to go get there quicker. That's why you do a shot. That's why you know,
You're preaching to the choir. I'm the guy that did LSD, the little droplets on plastic, and put it in my tear duct, because that thing converted to the brain in a matter of seconds. So I know exactly what you're saying, and I called myself a drug seeker. And when I use that term today, people get really upset. It's like, it's so funny, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm really, I don't know, I'm really trying to be strategic with my conversations with people. You may be my only friend left, Fred,
that's
outside my
okay.
family.
I'll be your friend. So the second thing I came across was that U.S. deaths linked to alcohol keep rising, but the numbers are especially alarming among women, in them. Now, men still are dying more from alcoholism or alcohol-related deaths, which includes strokes, heart attacks, all that.
Yep.
But from 2020 and 2021, an average of 488 Americans every day died from excessive drinking. Now, how that's linked, I don't know. I don't have the scientific study in front of me, but that's just off of their headline and stuff. But
Right.
in those years, the rate of women excessive deaths has risen above men, just not in complete numbers yet.
Well, one of the data points around that, and I know that just because of what I do, is that the last 10 years, um, they called it the soccer mom, drinker. The family whose kids grew up and they became empty nesters, and the primary income earner, generally speaking, not to be sexist, was the male, who had outside of the home activities, whether it be golf, travel, poker with the guys, and I don't want anyone to come to me and go, well, you're sounding like a sexist. I'm just giving you the information that I've heard, that the mom who had been home with all this responsibility now no longer has it. So she and her friends have kind of gotten together and they've been drinking a lot. And, over a short period of time, a lot of alcohol can have a big impact on somebody, especially in their 40s and 50s. Since you haven't been drinking it over time, your body kind of goes, what is this? So that's one of the facts that I've heard. And,
Yeah.
also,
And it makes sense.
in California,
It
of
makes
course,
sense.
the divorce issue, 55% of married people get divorced in California. So, I don't know where that goes, but it was a soccer mom story that I heard a long time ago that really made a lot of sense. And I've actually talked with women who have said to me, I'm not going to quit drinking. I enjoy being with my friends. It's a socialized consumption. And, some days I don't know where my husband is and I don't really want to know where he's at. And, my kids are happy and they're getting supported. And I just want to I don't want a major change in my life right now. But they end up, drinking too much. And of course, if they've been on medication for any of the things I've just described, mixing those two things could cause that overdose as well. Accelerate.
Well, that leads me into another study that showed that more and more people are addicted to more than one substance at a time. They're finding these deaths that they're mixing drugs, and that's what the toxicology reports are coming back. It's a mix of it. They're not just addicted to alcohol alone. It's alcohol and cocaine. And they're finding that. So, which becomes they're becoming their own at-home scientist, creating the mixture, the cocktail that satisfies them.
Dr. Drew came out right after, it's funny. Sometimes when I open my mouth and I realize the data I have in my brain, when I thought I wasn't paying attention, but when Whitney Houston passed away, there was clearly a big shock to everybody. And when the autopsy was done, what they found was she had been on prescription medication for anxiety, sleeping, maybe Adderall. They didn't really name the drugs, but they said something to wake up, something to go to sleep, to your point. And then she was recreationally using other drugs. And it was a combination of the cocaine, supposedly with alcohol, with the other drugs that caused her to, I don't know, expire. I'm just going to put it that way. And it's interesting because Dr. Drew, who he is, came out and said, for decades, he was really upset emotionally and personally because he said for decades, musicians, movie stars, athletes have been doing drugs regularly at a high rate, not including steroids and other things. And he said what was happening is since the prescription drugs entered into people's normal day, to your point, something to wake up, something to go to sleep, and because they didn't want to be in that environment of taking illicit drugs, and illicit drugs really weren't that strong 10, 12, 15 years ago, like methamphetamine is now, or cocaine's purity is now, or even, fentanyl, or even heroin. So the mix is what was contributing to this hugely accelerated overdose rate. And then, of course, the oxy and the opioids that got piled on. started, and then of course now the accidental overdose, where young people are taking things where one pill can kill. So it's an interesting, if you track it over time, it's an interesting phenomenon how things have started to progress. And, then of course, here comes COVID, right? And everyone's kind of isolated and depressed or upset or sleep deprived or whatever's going on, because it wasn't normal to be home all the time. And they're venting platforms like school or social clubs or sports or whatever kind of stopped. So now all of a sudden, without the coping skills, people are internalizing and they're imploding. And we're seeing it with the extreme mental health problems that people are experiencing and not using drugs or don't know how yet or haven't been introduced, or they're just kind of hoping that, something else will happen. So this perfect storm is growing on a regular basis.
Yeah, it is. And, another thing they're saying is taking study drugs like Adderall are proving to be more of a gateway than marijuana.
Yeah. And I've seen studies that show marijuana is not a gateway drug. But historically, I remember when I first heard that term and understood it, somebody said, well, that would be like saying drinking water is a gateway drug for heroin or a gateway, beverage for heroin. So, but you're right, because most people don't go from here to there. They kind of experiment a little bit and, or accidentally get a hold of stuff or read about somebody or one of their friends. My friends, when I was in treatment, they came to visit me going, we partied with him every week. Do we have the same problem he has? And that was interesting. I lost a lot of people I knew at that time because they were just scared to death that whatever I was doing could kill them. Not
Right.
that I was doing it to them. We were doing it together. But,
Right.
I think I had huge capacity because, well, that ain't killing me. I might as well do some more. But again, the drugs today are so much more stronger than ever before. And I think that's the piece of information, of education we have to really get to young people to understand. Just because your mom and dad smoked marijuana in the 70s doesn't mean if you're smoking marijuana in 2024 and all you're taking is a gram of, of some Sensiman, for example, and something happens and you start to hallucinate, it's because it's, 92% THC. Stuff in my
Right.
day was, 9%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a few questions from what you have, and before we end the show and everything,
Yep.
we'll do a half hour today. But can you give me, like, you don't got to go into the long form of it, but can you tell me about your treatment approach from what you know for people with alcohol problems from the start, and if it differs with somebody, say, opioids? So if somebody comes to you today with an alcohol problem, where does the first step and what are the next steps?
Well, alcohol, there's a lot of different modalities because it's been around a long time and it affects the brain differently, I think, than an opioid does. So it's a little more easily treatable, if you will. And I don't want to make it sound that simple, but there are techniques for it. There are medications you can take, like Antabuse. There's a couple others that reduce the Antabuse. Actually, if you drink alcohol, makes you sick and you throw up. There's also monitoring services, a breathalyzer where you can breathe in real time, and it actually sends your, if there's any alcohol in your system, to your parole officer, your rabbi, your priest, your pastor, your treatment provider. So there's different tools for alcohol. When it comes to opioids, there aren't a lot of tools. There are, methadone clinics, there's Suboxone, there's things that are coming out today. Buprenorphine, it can be used and can be injected in somebody while they're in the hospital coming out of an overdose or while overdosing. So those tools are there, but they don't generally treat the long-term addiction. The component of treatment, in my opinion, that really works is once you've detoxed, once you've had a medically supervised, craving reduction or complete dependency separation, getting involved in treatment is really important. But I think what's even more important is staying in treatment. It's kind of like a diet, Fred. Anybody can diet, anyone can lose weight, but keeping the weight off is the hardest part. So having long-term support, and most of the insurance industry doesn't pay for more than 30 days. of anything, even the most robust policies. And when you
And
think about it,
what happens at that point? Let's say I'm on my 29th day. Are they packing my stuff and just saying, see ya?
yeah,
Or do they have, will they say I'm in a facility
they
and
will
I'm
no
at
longer
my,
generate revenue from you being there. So they may not pack your bags literally, but figuratively. They say, look, you're they blame it on the insurance company. Insurance companies, and that used to be the tradition, 30 days. Now it's even less. And it used to be 7 to 10 days for detox. Now it's like 3 to 5 because detox is expensive because you're medically supervised 24 hours a day with vitals being checked. So in a traditional inpatient program, an outpatient program like we run, we don't check vitals, and people have their own doctors, and it's not medically supervised, but we have medical experts we can refer people to. But what happens is when the benefits are sunsetted, they're not going to keep you there. And they also know that people that leave, this is why this industry is, in my opinion, its reputation is justified. When you leave, they know that 95% of you are going to relapse. So when you read about some of these places like in Malibu, and I can't remember the name of that one, that they proudly used to express their joy around how the average person would come back 4 times, at 90 grand a month. That's insane.
yeah, it
Insane.
is.
So it's $360,000 to, I called it shut up treatment, or it was so nice there. They figured, well, I got cleaned once, I can do it again. So to me, it's the long-term support that works. And when you look at some of these fellowships, the 12-step programs or other programs, when you come in, they're lifelong programs. There's no
So,
sunset.
so if I go in for the 30 days and it works, those 30 days,
You
I
get the
stay
tool.
clean. I stay clean for 30 days, but then relapse. Is my insurance then going to put me back for 30 days into rehab?
Generally speaking, if you've got the right kind of insurance, they will, but they might shorten your time, or they may say, you need to go to an outpatient program before we pay for a relapse in an inpatient program. Again, it really depends on your policy. But if you have a doctor, there's medical necessity, they can usually wrestle with you and your insurance company, but they usually sunset the benefits. That's why when you think about an industry, the 95% failure rate, you think these insurance companies say, if you're willing to go, but again, in that 30-day treatment center, everything's taken care of for you. They prepare your meals, your schedules, your sleep patterns. They wake you up, basically tuck you in, so to speak, and everything's structured. When you leave, okay, even though you've got a whole new toolbox, you haven't had a chance to take those tools and utilize them yet. So if your level of motivation isn't really high, or your craving hasn't gone away completely, or you go back to doing what you used to do, those are all triggers. You're going to get loaded again. And that's the problem. That's why the long-term care is so important. Again, you go on a diet, you need to learn how to change your lifestyle. You need to do different food choices. You need to understand what you're putting in your body. Hey, look, it's like diabetes. It can't be any simpler than that. You get diagnosed, you check your blood sugar level, and you put insulin in your body on a regular basis. You make some lifestyle changes, and you keep doing that, checking in with your medical professional. The odds are you can live a very normal life. Same
Right.
thing with,
But isn't it difficult that would a lot of times you have to move? Like if I'm in one area of Connecticut and this is where I keep getting in trouble, this is where my friends, quote unquote friends,
right?
who I used with are here. Am I recommended to go start my life over somewhere else?
Well,
Where's that?
there's actually a term for that. It's called doing a geographic. Here's the problem. You have that saying that, wherever I go, I am there.
Yeah.
So you're still the same person. I mean, if you're living in a physical space in a home where people are actively using, then you go on to what's called a structured alcohol and drug-free housing component, hence normally known as sober living. Or you go into, some form of aftercare where you're actually living with other people that are in recovery. The problem is this disease is so cunning and baffling. Many of them are still using in the aftercare programs. So you
Right.
really need to get a mentor. That's why the social model, in my opinion, helps with accountability, where you're checking in with a sponsor or a mentor, and you're also checking in with an outpatient program. That's why I like outpatient over inpatient, but some people need that inpatient jump start. And I support that because one size doesn't fit all, but some people have done it so many times. I'm dealing with somebody now that they've gone through rehab 17 different times. So I said, so what's different now? Well, my kidney's failing. I have a lung problem. My blood is coming out with very bad results of my testing, and I have a family who is going to leave me alone completely, and I can't live without them. So they've gotten to a point where they've made the decision. They really don't have a whole lot of choice, and if they don't do it, they're going to die.
Yeah, I
And that's
assume the term rock bottom isn't always the bottom either. They think they're at rock bottom, and there's always another layer below it, and that's usually your health.
There's always another rung on the ladder, and when the rungs of the ladder are gone, you're on the ground. When you're on the ground, you're by yourself, and you can't move. It's a tough place to be. There's a term, hitting bottom. I don't believe everyone has to hit bottom, because some people say, well, how do we get them to hit bottom? I said, well, you can't. You can't really get them to hit bottom. It's something that happens, organically with their behavior, and hopefully you can catch them before they fall off the cliff if you can.
Right. Yeah, it's all very confusing and very time. And there's a reason why.
Very opaque. It's very opaque. It's not like I have a broken finger, I get a cast, I have a little physical therapy, and I'm back to normal. This is something in the brain. This is the brain's wired differently. And because you have to ask yourself, why would someone put those kind of things in their body on a daily basis, knowing they could die? And you said it earlier.
Yeah, nobody stigmatizes the broken finger.
Exactly.
Even if you got it in a mysterious way, nobody's going to stigmatize you. You're going to tell you to get it fixed.
Yeah. Well,
without guilt.
This disease of addiction, I saw a guy the other day I knew from the homeless world 20 years ago, and he was saying, no other disease would somebody say, you look like you're not ready to stop, come back in 30 days. Or, you were in here last week, you were in here the week before, we're going to penalize you and make you wait 30 days before you come back. No other disease on the planet do we do that with people except with addiction and a compulsive obsessive behavior, that for some reason people cannot control on their own. But it's the only one where doctors will turn you away, treatment centers will turn you away, hospitals will turn you away. They'll just go, you're not ready. Who does that? I mean,
well,
the
mentality is still there that they're throwaways, that they're useless, that they're not important. They become, and I'm just as guilty in certain circumstances when I'm driving downtown and I see a zombie walking by. My mind doesn't automatically go to that person needs my help. It's starting to change that way, but I also have to think of my well-being in those situations. You can't just save somebody. We talk about that often. They have to save themselves initially.
Well,
they have to want
sometimes they need to be shaken, not necessarily literally, but figuratively. And the person you just described is the same description that people use about homeless people. And it's the same description they use about people coming out of jail and prison. So we've got this mindset that certain people, those people, they need to fix themselves. And we don't help incentivize a pathway for them to do that with consequences as well. I mean, the big push now that I'm seeing in the Western state, we got to get them inside this housing first model for homeless. Well, and they're not going to test them for drugs and alcohol because they think that people should have the right to do what they want to do. Well, that to me is the highest level of enabling if you're not really going to help somebody with all the tools. So either help them or don't help them, but throw them into an environment with no life skills, no management understanding of how to do things, how to take care of themselves. But they go, oh, there's a case manager downstairs. They can come down anytime they want. That's not how it works. People don't come out for help on a daily basis.
It's not going to work that way, but okay. Well, that was an interesting conversation. Next week, we're going to have a guest. I won't reveal who yet. We'll keep it mysterious. I like mystery. But this
Yeah,
is Your Crisis Coach. You can find Scott at yourcrisiscoach.com, I believe, correct?
that is correct.
And that's his website. And you can find us on YouTube, Your Crisis Coach. Please subscribe to that. You can see the link below. We're on TikTok with our short program, and that's doing well and growing, but we could always use more growth. And you can find us on Apple and Spotify. I haven't set us out to every single podcast streaming thing there is. I went with the big boys of Apple and Spotify right now, but we see some growth, but we could always use more. So make sure you're talking about us and all that. You could also email us at yourcrisiscoachpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll take any of your questions. We'll talk about them on the air. And if you want to be a guest, whether you're an addict or know somebody that's an addict, or a doctor or somebody that's in the background of addiction or mental health, you're welcome on the show. You do not need to show your face. You don't need to give your real name. We are here for the information, not necessarily the attraction or any of that. Look at us, for Christ's sake. Two men that are past our prime, sadly. It's over, Scott. It's over.
I don't know
But
if
I
I
wish
actually
you a
had.
good day.
I don't know if I had a prime.
Yeah,
Thank
my
you.
prime hasn't reached either, but
You'll get
everybody
your.
be good out there. And if nobody has told you they love you today, we love you. This is Your Crisis Coach podcast. That's Scott H. Silverman. I'm Fred Carroll. We'll be back again next week. See you later. Let me stop the recording.